have words. Let's have words. Say what it's all about. We're gonna say what it's about. We're gonna talk it out.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Have Words, your Sunday night talk show with me, Lara Samuels, your host. And we're here every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, broadcasting on WWHR Internet Media from the beautiful region of southern New Hampshire. It's looking more beautiful every day. Buds are coming out. Every day I see something new, some new life coming out. So it's an amazing time to be alive. So, welcome again to Let's Have Words. And for those of you that are not familiar with the show, Let's Have Words is a talk show. And we discuss a range of topics. You never know what you're going to hear about on Let's Have Words. And we are... interested in promoting the notion that conversation is, the way to peace, I guess. to make it super profound and meaningful, we'll just say that, having conversations and keeping communication open between people is an important, way of avoiding, conflict. So. Even if you're not necessarily persuading somebody over to your side, it's still important to talk about stuff. It's kind of the idea. So that's what we're about here on Let's Have Words, and we've done about 20 episodes. I lost count a while back, so I'm not exactly sure, but we cover a wide range of topics. And tonight we're gonna do a little bit of an open discussion. So on our open discussion shows, what happens is I introduce a topic of some kind, which I will introduce in a moment. And you can come on either in the chat, so you can write your comments and questions in the chat if you prefer, or you can come into the WWHR virtual studio and join us with your video on in the room. So that is another possibility when we open the phones, which we will do momentarily. So that's the idea. I'm gonna introduce a topic, and then of course you're welcome to come on either through the chat or with your video into the studio. So tonight's topic I would classify as perhaps slightly controversial. Now, we do not shy away from covering controversial topics. So, and tonight is an example, because I think that tonight's topic can sometimes, depending on where the conversation goes, can get people a little bit riled up, maybe get them a little emotional topic here. So I just want to remind people, not that I'm anticipating some sort of, verbal brawl. We can't have a physical brawl because we're in the virtual world. But I do want to remind people that it is very important when discussing things that perhaps people disagree slightly about, that or even disagree a lot about. It's important for people to check their emotions at the door and just kind of stick to the facts, and or stick to the argument, and not get emotional about things, and not get angry about things, and certainly not launch any personal attacks, and keep the discussion about the subject, and not start attacking people. I've noticed that a lot of our discourse these days seems to amount to, and end with a lot of personal attacks or people calling each other names. And we like to be civilized here on Let's Have Words. So I believe strongly that people can disagree and still have civilized discussions. And we don't have to call each other names or anything like that. So I mention that because I do think tonight's topic is potentially controversial. Well, why don't I just introduce? So reminder, just be nice, okay? It's very simple, very simple. There it is, be nice. That's the only rule. See, number one rule of tonight's discussion, or any discussion, is be nice. That's it. That's all you have to remember. Okay, that's the only rule. And respect the other person, even if you don't agree with them about the topic. Okay, so that being said, tonight's topic is social Darwinism, which is something that I feel like has kind of, well, I mean, throughout history, since social Darwinism as an idea, I guess, originated with Herbert Spencer in like the mid-1800s. It did not originate with Charles Darwin, who is right behind me, that side. I always get my directions confused. There, now I'm pointing out his head. It's right there, Charles Darwin. And I'd have to say, I just want a little aside here. Charles Darwin, I try not to have heroes. I'm very sort of devoted to this idea that people are deeply flawed, and even great people are deeply flawed, and it's very hard, and I try not to worship people, because I think that you have to sort of, I'm curious about people and all their facets and their, complexities, but I try not to worship people. But if I were to say that I maybe perhaps worship one person in history, I would say it's perhaps Charles Darwin and maybe Neil Young. Charles Darwin, of course, because I have a biology background and I'm interested in the living world, and of course Charles Darwin with his contributions to the biological realm, with his idea of natural selection, evolution by natural selection, deeply flawed. Some are just imperfect. Oh, okay, fine, whatever. So however you want to put it. But Charles Darwin had nothing to do with social Darwinism. So Charles Darwin, of course, is his notion of natural selection, that the fittest, the fittest are the individuals that are best adapted to their environment, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that the strongest are the ones who survive, right? Which is kind of how social Darwinism the direction that social Darwinism takes us. Also, of course, he didn't apply it to society. This notion of natural selection, Darwin did not apply it to society. That was more in Herbert Spencer's realm of thinking, that societies work much the same way. So that that if you shouldn't necessarily, that suffering is actually good for society, because it's bad for individuals, but it's good for society, because it will sort of cull out the weak and make the society as a whole stronger, right? So that's the kind of the Herbert Spencer notion. And if you beg to differ with me, that's wonderful. Please come on, and I'm sure I'm not exactly summarizing it fairly. So that's my understanding of Herbert Spencer's viewpoint, which he and Charles Darwin had nothing to do with that. And I do want to say this quote here behind me. Which way do I go? This way. If the misery of the poor be not caused by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, then great is our sin. So that is a Charles Darwin quote. And just to illustrate the fact that he was, not a social Darwinist himself. So anyway, that's Charles Darwin behind me there. My only hero, maybe. All right, anyway. So Herbert Spencer sort of initiated this notion. Oh, hey, Mark. Sort of initiated, yeah, right, that's a good point. That's a really good point, right. They don't believe in actual evolution, but social Darwinism, they're all about that, yeah. So, the notion that the fittest survive in society. So in other words, the wealthy people deserve to be wealthy because they, of course, they succeeded because of their, innate characteristics of greatness, and the poor deserve to be poor because they failed, and then actually they failed because of some, deep-seated character flaw, and in fact that's the law of nature, right? That's the way things should be, and that over time that societies become stronger because when the weak are removed from society. So that's the notion of social Darwinism, and it goes throughout history. It's like fallen in and out of popularity. So like during the Gilded Age with the robber barons and all that, Carnegie and everybody, it was very a popular idea. And then between the wars and the Depression, it kind of became less dominant in the popular imagination because people could see with their very own eyes how people through no fault of their own ended up destitute, jobless, right, or wounded or widowed or whatever, so they could see it with their own eyes, and and so that sort of this notion of social Darwinism kind of was not as popular at that moment in time. But then of course it reared its ugly head again in like the 1980s, and here it is again. The reason I feel like it's important to talk about this right now is I think that that Trump, and I think that many people in his movement are at their very core of a lot of their views is this notion of social Darwinism, that that there shouldn't be any social programs that help people, there shouldn't be any hand up for people, because we should just let the the free market just work it out, and but I also think there's some hope, because I just want to, if you haven't figured it out, I am certainly no social Darwinist myself. I would categorize myself as a progressive thinker. I do think that overall that the government can invest in people, and ultimately, if people have their basic needs met, that they can reach their full potential, and that is what makes society strong. That's how I think, and so I'm definitely not a social Darwinist in any way, shape, or form. So full disclosure there. But it's rearing its ugly head and Donald Trump himself is a social Darwinist, I would say. So you can gather that from some of his comments. Like I believe he said something along the lines of, "I wouldn't want poor people running things because the rich are there we go. There's the quote. I love all people." Trump says he loves all people, which I'm not so sure about that, rich or poor, but in those particular positions, I just don't want a poor person. So he's saying, he wants rich people, because rich people are brilliant by nature. He wants them in charge. And I think there's a lot of social Darwinism in the MAGA movement. I think, with COVID, a lot of it came out with, just let, herd immunity, just sacrifice the weak, and let the community take care of everything, and that's a very social Darwinist perspective, and this whole the whole notion, a lot of policies that are embraced by the political right are at their very core social Darwinist and I think this is a key idea that would require deep thought. That's true. I also believe that is true. I think that Trump doesn't think much beyond his own needs at any given moment. And right, he's not even smart enough to have any kind of coherent ideology. But I do think that whether he knows it or not, he thinks he deserves to be rich. And he thinks that rich people, he probably doesn't actively think this, but I think that that's apparent in his comments and behaviors, that he believes that rich people are deserving of their wealth, and so there we have it. So that's why we're talking about it. tonight. So, because I think that it's, I'm starting to see it come out pretty vividly, especially since Trump. But even before that, though, like if I recall when we were, discussing the Affordable Care Act, I remember all those meetings where people were yelling out, let them die, that's saying that people should, if they can't afford health care, we should just let them die, which is also a very social Darwinist perspective. So it's not like, it's not like it hasn't been floating around in various ways. All right, so there we have it. That's my little introduction here. So I'm just going to open the phones. We can come on. We can talk about this idea. And I just want to remind people, just in case, I just want to remind people one more time that this topic can be a little bit controversial. It can get a little bit heated. People can get emotional. And just remember, always be nice. And no personal attacks, okay? Personal attacks don't advance conversation in any way, shape, or form. They actually cut off communication. That's all the personal attack does. So try to refrain from that if possible. And so what do you guys think? So so we're opening the phone, so you can come on with your video if you would like. Come into the virtual studio. We can talk about what you think about this topic. What do you think creates a healthy society? You think we should just let, yes, multiple folks can be on the screen at the same time. Should we just let sort of, just let the free market sort everything out and not intervene, not give people a leg up? Some people, hi Conrad. Some people think that, and I'm sure, and Conrad I know has some of this thinking in that brain of his, that that people, if you help them too much, they might
Well,
become dependent somehow.
excuse me, that sounded like a personal attack
No.
in the brain of his.
All right, you're right. I'm sorry.
I'm
Well, you're right. I have to abide by my own rules.
It would be not a.
I didn't mean to. I meant that the wise, advanced, expansive brain of yours is what I meant to say. So, although on this point, I would say that you're not. It's that you're not really. Your thinking is a little aberrant on this point, because I've had these discussions with you before, and I'm aware of the fact that you do embrace a little bit of the notion that somehow by giving people assistance, you are creating dependency and et cetera. Even though, by the way, the statistics and the facts do not bear that out.
Well, my facts were from years ago.
Yeah.
When I was growing up with my friends from teenage years into working days. And some of my friends figured out how to live for nothing.
Yes.
And just do drugs, do a little bit of crime.
A little bit of crime. A little light crime on the side.
Well, they didn't rob banks, but they would do, break houses and steal cars, things like, minor crimes. No guns involved. They were not crazy.
Right.
And it helped them to sort of go away from normal life. It's like if you have a crutch when you're little, if you're in a wheelchair, before you start walking, you'll never learn walking.
So what do you think would have happened if they hadn't had public assistance? They would have gotten a respectable job.
It's a better chance. There's no guarantee.
I guess I'll get a respectable job. I think they would have committed worse crimes, perhaps.
Well, they started with jobs and then they realized I don't have to work.
Oh.
You know what I mean? I'd say just collect some welfare food stamps, get assistance, make a child, get extra money. They learn how to play the system.
I do want to point out. I mean, I'm not. So I know that was your experience.
Right, and it's limited,
which is anecdotal evidence, but the statistics do not bear that out.
but it's,
Like most people who utilize assistance are not, manipulating the system or dependent, or, they use it when they need it, and that's,
well,
that's the majority of the people that are on public assistance. But anyway, I do want to also point out that you're aware that it changed dramatically under Clinton in 1996.
there were some changes.
Not just some changes, big changes,
I beg to
where aid to families with dependent children, which is what you're talking about, cash assistance, not food stamps, but there's all different kinds of assistance. So, but specifically what people were calling welfare, right? You could only be on it for, I think I think it varies by state, but I think the max in many states is like 2 years over the course of your life. Like not even consecutively, but 2 years total. So that, it's changed dramatically since your experience in the 70s. So I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah, I never followed it. I remember Clinton
Yeah.
changes. This is so long
Yeah,
ago.
so people can't, what I'm saying is, and very few people even receive cash assistance. And most people that receive it are disabled and or, older, elderly.
Right, for real.
Right. I mean, so this myth that's in people's head, is not only was it not even true at the time, in terms, if you look at the statistics, it wasn't true, but it's definitely not true now because it changed and made it temporary.
No, I understood it then as well.
I don't know why I'm doing so many air quotes tonight. This is like my fifth I'm not going to do any more air quotes, I promise.
Well, even then I understood that some people really needed it. I just had personal, friends.
Yes,
I
lot
knew
of people need it.
I knew people that took advantage of it sort of wrongly. That's all. Unnecessarily.
Well, I think I'm of the belief that any system has corruption in it, and
Right.
and so you do your best to mitigate it, but that's not a reason to disparage it. I mean, you got to look at, what percentage of people are actually helped. There's abuse in all systems, exactly. I'm more worried about, like I've told you before, I'm more worried about the bum on the plush. The rich who take advantage of, they rip a lot more,
No, I understand.
off the system than poor people
I
do.
understand. Well, and there is a lot of reasons to be compassionate. Compassion is not bad.
And it's not just compassion. It's
But-
good. There's evidence that a really well-designed system, and my emphasis on well-designed, right, of assistance, if it's done correctly, can break the cycle of poverty. So in other words, the children do better, and go on to be, I did my air quotes again, productive members of society, and
So I am not pro social Darwinism. That goes too far.
I know you're not. I know.
But on the other hand, compassion is good, but spoiling people is not. And now, how do you draw the line? You know what I mean? And so that's why it's tough. Spoiling, being compassionate but don't spoil them. That's
Yeah.
tough too. I don't know how to draw the line.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think obviously, I think that people need some skin in the game in most cases.
That's what I'm right.
Yeah.
So,
But
so I have another example for that. You were
Yeah.
talking about the market economy,
yeah,
and it has faults. Of course it does.
yeah.
I grew up not on the market economy, and it was horrible. It was much worse.
Right. I don't think we're disparaging the market economy here, although I would, but I don't think that's what we're doing.
Okay, well, you brought that up as part of the social Darwinism.
But because the idea is that the market will sort it all out. and just don't interfere, you know. That
Well,
that
so
that notion that cruelty is the key to prosperity. That you can't give people help at all. They just those that are the strongest will survive, and that will create a stronger society over time.
yeah, again, in print, there are some principles for that, and the theory of evolution is one of them. But there is a lot to be said for compassion as well.
Yeah.
There is Christianity teaches compassion. There is a reason it became the greatest religion, as far as worldwide.
But I would argue that it's not even just compassion. It's also better for society if people have their basic needs met. If the majority of people have access to health care and good education and just the basics of life, we could argue over what that is, but if people have access to the basics, that is what creates a good society.
Oh yeah, no argument there.
Yeah.
You know,
So it's
but-
not just about compassion. It's practical.
Yeah. So to me, sort of a good example, for the social Darwinism is the school system, is the teaching, the level of teaching, how softer it became over decades, and the students are less and less learned. They finish high school, whatever school level of school, and they are much worse educated than 20, 50 years ago. And that's because we got soft, and this is where the social
I want to see evidence for that.
Oh, I have plenty. I don't know
Good.
if I
I
don't know
want to
if,
see it.
yeah, I can't present it because this is all from friends I talk to. Work with students.
I wonder if that's
and
actually.
how little the students know comparing to us 30 years ago.
But I wonder if that's perception or if that's actually true.
Well, they are lazy and they are not, and they are spoiled essentially, and they are not knowledgeable.
But this is just you're just speculating. You're just
Well,
saying
well-
that. You don't know.
No, I noticed that at work myself. I noticed that I talked to one of my relatives who's a doctorate, and she has
Yeah.
students, PhD students, and they know half this. They are a lot. They know a lot less than we used to know.
Where did friends I talk to is not evidence. Thank you, Mark. That's anecdotal. You have to have actual hard evidence. But where did I see somewhere that like throughout history, the older generation always thinks the younger generation is lazy and stupid. It's
No, it's weaker. No, the words
and weak and all of it.
the generation is weaker than the previous
I think
generation.
it's just perception.
No, this was about physical. I think they meant physical strength, and that's true because
Oh,
people.
physical strength.
I believe that
Well,
was.
according to Tucker Carlson and friends, the testosterone levels are plummeting.
That's a whole different story.
Well,
That's
right. That's a subject
I
for
never
another
researched
day.
that. No, but physically, no. What you just said is the physical part, and it's
Yes.
true. And it's true because people physically, before they didn't ride cars, they had to carry things,
Right.
and so on it goes. There were horses. You had to run a plow behind a horse, not on a tractor.
Yeah.
And on you go. They did things with shovels and picks.
But I think
now
maybe the tools for survival change. I mean, now, it's your tools for survival are more sort of intellectual, like being able to,
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's all
to navigate on,
Clearly, that's part of evolution that we are.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it was good to do everything by hand, but this is where they got weaker. That's all. That's because that I thought about. That we get physically, every generation is physically weaker before than the past because of who is this?
This is Rigo.
Who the hell is this?
You know who that is? That's Rigo.
How goes it?
Hey, it's good to see you.
Yeah, nice to
Oh,
see
we're-
you.
When you disappear for a long time, you are not recognized anymore.
All right, Rigo, give us the lowdown.
I just wanted to add one thing to the conversation, which is that I know that the title isn't exactly survival of the fittest, but what it seems to me is at stake here is what is the principle that should guide what a set of social policies look like?
Yeah.
right? Most, you can think about it as a philosophy too. And then the idea that the strong should survive comes with a whole host of problems. Foremost of which is that when you leave the quote unquote weak behind, I'm going to use some scare quotes too. It's not just about making sure that the strong survive. It's short sighted in the sense that it overlooks the demonstrable fact that lots of folks who are quote unquote weak end up producing all kinds of beneficial things that help everyone.
Yeah, I'm glad. Right, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, what constitutes strength? I mean, it's not just physical strength. There's all kinds of benefits that people can bring to society. Like older people bring, wisdom and understanding, and and people, all people can contribute something to society. So it's right. So it's. And that is what creates a strong society, is the diversity in the skill sets that people bring to the table.
And by giving people the skills to succeed, you never know what might come from, what kind of achievements they might produce, what kind of, medical insights that they might produce because they had access to schools, even though they maybe were missing an arm or something, or on it.
Exactly.
Right. Because if your notion of strength is based purely on, can you defend yourself, can you kill, and so forth, there's a lot that you potentially lose.
Yeah.
No, but I think of it more generically. Strength, intellectual, physical is on the minor now. Hundreds of years ago it was on the major. I agree, but now
I feel like that this is. I mean, so this notion has always been around, obviously, and influencing how people think, but it's so prevalent right now again. Like I just hear it all over the place. This, with COVID, let the sacrifice the weak, and with all the debates over Obamacare, like let them die. There's this whole notion of social Darwinism that kind of permeates that entire
I think that's
way
different.
of thinking, and it's scary to me. It's very frightening because
I disagree with you. I think this was more playing games on people's minds.
Yeah, that's true, Catherine.
I mean, I disagree with you. This was just this is business people playing games on people's minds. They try to defend their approach to medicine, to charging for medicine, or and they use the republic, they use the philosophical grandiose, just like communists, where I grew up, they defended they're stealing the money because we are helping everybody. This is the idealism. It was bullshit.
Yeah.
So Republicans do this. Both parties. I'm not sure Democrats do it less, but Republicans do it a lot. They use philosophical.
Well, I think they use that whole the idea to justify, cutting spending in social programs, and
But this because this is for their businesses to make more money. That's all, for their supporters. That's all.
Yeah.
So this is game, intellectual game. They've been doing it for years. I noticed that with since Reagan's, whenever I started to, that they use these philosophies, this grandiose, sounds good, but it's really just to make my friends rich. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Sure. Catherine, I think Catherine agrees with you. I guess with COVID, it's now genetic Darwinism. Who can genetically? Well, exactly. But that's right. The whole notion of herd immunity, is sort of let the weak perish, And I always wonder when people say that kind of shit. I'm like, do you have a grandmother? I mean, do you know somebody who's disabled? Don't you have people in your life? Is everybody that super, super strong or something? I mean, how can they get away with saying that? I just don't think they really think it through entirely. I think it's just something they say, but they don't think it all the way through, Like, let them die. Somebody can't afford health care, just let them die.
I just think they are preaching to their masses, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think that's real, you know what I mean, like you're saying. They just, their supporters when I hear stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like Trumpism, just Trump supporters. There's a certain mentality that goes with that.
Yeah.
So being mean, whatever, it's good because I don't know. It's just made up.
Well, yeah,
There is a propaganda, like I don't know. There's a better word for it, but where you use logic in a wrong, in a wrong way, whatever people's emotions, you just play on it for your own greedy, material purposes.
yeah,
Church done it over the decade, over hundreds of years. The Catholic Church done it. They got rich,
right.
preaching and playing game. There was, Christianity is good, but it was abused as well. So you can get I guess what I'm trying to say is you can take any idea that there is truth to it and abuse it, misuse it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
For material, monetary reasons or power reasons. Got to be a king or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, all too often, Conrad, you mentioned not growing up under a free market system. In the United States, especially since Reagan, who you brought up, so I'll reference him as well. There's been this discourse, this way of speaking about the economy as when you let the free market do its thing, then the best results will follow. But the free market in the United States refers to a very select set of people. And those people are the folks who tend to lobby pretty hard to get particular politicians into office.
Yep.
And when we talk about the free market and privatization and whatnot, it's almost always the case that the folks who helped folks like Reagan or Clinton or anybody since Reagan really get into office are the folks who benefit from those supposed free market policies. Just to give you an example, when the military underwent privatization processes. The food services were privatized, clothing was privatized, private security forces were hired to patrol certain areas that the U.S. military had subdued. It's not like you and the three of us got letters in the mail saying, "Hey, we're gonna open this up to the highest bidder. You're going to be able to
Right.
submit a contract to control private security forces in Saudi Arabia." Obviously, the people who got those deals are folks like Dick Cheney, because they're the ones who had the major companies that get people into political office. To the point, which is that the guiding ideologies, be it survival of the fittest or racism or whatever, tend to just advantage whoever is already in power, and they're used to justify those people continuing to be in power. And in many cases, it's very simple.
Yeah.
I agree with you. That's what I was trying to say.
Self-fulfilling.
In different words, that they use sort of the good principles for wrong reasons. They pretend that it's this while it's really something else. You know what I'm trying to say? I totally agree with you.
And I'll just say one more thing, which is that the big politicians in the U.S. again since Reagan, they've all made sure to get economists who will say things that align with what they want everyone to believe. There's some names that I could throw out. Larry Summers is one of the bigger one. He was at Harvard. They don't call on people, for example, like Adam Kahneman. You can look him up, Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize for his research on the economics of well-being, which showed very clearly something that we were hearing from Kaylin earlier, which is that when you ensure that there's a material base of security that everyone in society meets, everyone tends to thrive. And frankly, when the folks at the top of the economic ladder get more money, it doesn't really result in any change in their well-being or even their perceptions of their happiness at all.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. I know. So it's, I guess we're entering this sort of like that this philosophy of social Darwinism is really used as a tool to just,
That's what I was.
That's, to perpetuate this system of privilege and wealth that we have. That's
because there is some basic merit in that,
Yeah.
As far as sports go, to pick something simple, that whoever punches hardest should be the champion. You know what I mean? And so a lot of it, same in school, whoever can do math better or whatever subjects, they should progress.
I think the other thing is I think that the people who tend to rise to the top are the people who have maybe not so, their characteristics that they possess are like bullies liars, people
When
who
you
can
say top,
misrepresent themselves, people
you
who
mean like top
like
scientists?
no, I don't mean that. I mean people who become that the skill set that's required to sort of bully your way into that system are not admirable characteristics necessarily. So it's not like the most brilliant or the most, the people with the best ideas or the people who are, the most qualified or whatever rise to the top. I think, a lot of times it's people who are better at manipulating the system.
But you're talking about business and politics, not science, music, right?
No, I mean, no, no, of course not. But I'm
Well,
just saying that I'm talking mostly about the business world, I guess.
okay,
Yes.
that's what I need.
Yeah,
you need
like,
to
yeah.
specify that because the
Because
top.
those are the people that become disgustingly rich most of the time.
Okay, so you're talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, a lot of it is
Like Koch brothers rich.
playing games, being good at playing games, conniving, and
Yeah.
somewhat smart, of course, but yeah.
Or just and willing to exploit others. I'm not trying to characterize all people that manage to succeed in society that way. I'm just saying that those characteristics are helpful.
No, it's often, of course.
Being honest and compassionate and kind and helpful, those characteristics aren't necessarily the ones that are going to cause you to succeed in society as it's set up now.
Especially the first one, you said.
Which is what? What was the first one I said?
You don't know?
No. I said kindness, honesty, kindness,
honesty,
compassion.
honest. You said
Yeah.
honest was the first, and yes.
I don't even think hard workers. In my experience, that the people who advance are usually people who are good at schmoozing more than the people that are actually hard workers.
Well, absolutely.
In fact, sometimes when you're a hard worker, people are like, "Oh, you're really good at working. You should just stay there.
No, absolutely.
You should just keep working."
No, in my corporate sort of work, that's how it was.
Yeah.
Good engineers didn't become managers.
Yeah, it's who you knew. It was who you knew.
It's people who could play
right. It was the
games.
people who are good at like networking and sort
Right.
of.
It was actually opposite. Good engineers didn't want to be managers, except the other ones.
Yeah.
They just by playing games and schmoozing and
Yeah.
No, but honesty is often considered by those people as being dumb. That's what I was.
Yeah, right. By hard-nosed, sort of the classic hard-nosed business person.
Right.
It's a dog-eat-dog world. You got to be, yeah,
Dumb. Right.
yeah. I don't know.
Well,
I was going to add one more thing, which is that oftentimes people feel like that if there's a guiding principle, whatever it happens to be, then things are fair. But as a social scientist, I'm always wondering about whether or not the way we talk about things and the principle, whether it actually lines up with the reality. And I'll give you a couple of examples that come to mind where people think that things are fair, although the first one of these everybody knows is kind of bullshit. In the United States, as I'm sure you both know, it used to be that most colleges and universities required an SAT score to get into college, right? And people said, well, the best and brightest kids are the ones who get into our schools, and their SAT score shows it. But the thing that most highly correlates with that SAT score is very simply parental income.
There she goes, like Catherine just said. Or their parents just find a way in. Yeah.
Right. So that's number one. Number two is something that came up in a book called Outliers, which is
I read that book.
Yeah, you remember. So it's the fact that a lot of folks assume that professional athletes, those who make it to the professional leagues, they did it because of their skill and hard work. Well, some researchers found that in the National Hockey League, almost every single player was born in January, February, or March.
Right. I remember that in the book.
Now, there's the reason that was the case wasn't because people born in January, February, and March work harder and practice harder. It was because of the way that they cut off ages for leagues.
Yep.
So the league was all kids born in a particular year. Well, kids born in January versus kids born in December, there's a huge disparity there when you're 5 or 6 years old. 12 months is a lot when you're 5 or 6 in terms of athletic ability, control of your body. Yeah. So at 5 or 6 years old, they were taking these kids who were 12 months apart, because there was basically nobody born in December who was in the National Hockey League. And those kids were better because they were older.
Yeah.
And then they got more practice time.
And they
which
got more practice, right.
and better.
It snowballed.
Fair about it at all. It was something silly. Like, what was the cutoff date? And how big were you? When
Right, like these random forces that are behind, success. Yeah, that's
And the
interesting. I
same
remember that,
question
yeah.
can be asked of something like, the strongest succeed or survive or whatever. Is there actually something else at work?
Yeah.
And usually there is.
Usually. Yeah, and then I think there's also a lot of luck and serendipity involved in success too. I think that same book discussed, was it that same book, that Bill Gates, for example, like went back over his life, and like there were some key moments that if they hadn't occurred, he never would have become Bill Gates. Like I think his high school was like the first high school to get, a computer that the students at the school had access to, and so he had that early, interaction when he was very young that most people didn't have, so there was that. There was something about his mother being a member of some board or something. I can't remember. There were like several things that if they hadn't occurred, Bill Gates probably wouldn't be Bill Gates. And they were entirely based on luck,
Yeah.
or just being in the right place at the right time.
Of course. Of
Yeah.
course.
Or just being, being in the right place at the right time is a big effect on
Of course.
people's success. Yeah,
Of course.
yeah. So, to argue, that being said, I do think that people's, personal motivation is not, I think that there is something to be said for people's, personal motivation to try and succeed as well. I think that it's not like it's nothing. It does play a role. All of those things play a role.
Mm-hmm.
Being in the right place at the right time,
Luck. Yeah, there's luck involved.
meeting the right people,
Oh, there's always some luck involved.
and also a little bit of your own personality and your own skill set, You're more likely to get into college if you were born a year with a low birth rate. There you go. That's a good one too, yeah. I wonder if that was from Outliers as well. You're speaking to my heart because I was a hockey mom for years. So I'm wondering, Catherine, if your children or child was born in January, February, March. Well, there's so all of these things come into play. Ultimately, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I just think it's ridiculous, but I see so much of it. It seems to be stirring. But I do think also COVID, though, is like another one of these March. COVID is another episode of like people really like exposing the fact that a lot of people can experience hard times from external causes, like just from losing their job or what. Like COVID once again exposed that idea that it's not only about your own, that
Right.
bad things can happen to good people, and that, people can become poor or become, disabled or whatever, from no fault of their own, right? And I think that's actually maybe is going to swing things optimistically and positively in the direction of maybe more progressive policies in the future. I don't know. We'll
I
see.
definitely think so, yes.
Yeah, I think, once again, yeah. It just like the Depression in the 30s did the same thing. It made people realize, oh, wait a minute,
Government has to get more involved.
Right. There's what would we have done in COVID without the safety net? The cash payments and the extended unemployment and the PPP and all these programs that help people. Imagine if none of that safety net hadn't been available. How much more catastrophic things would have been economically. Unions are making a comeback. Are they? They are kind of. Amazon store, warehouse or whatever, unionized recently. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Things swing back and forth. But I think social Darwinism is a dangerous idea that needs to be pissed on. Any chance we get. I don't know. We've got a neighbor down the street who like hangs all these, these like nasty, aggressive signs in his window. I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of aggression and, I don't know.
There is some.
Scaring.
There's definitely some.
I think Trump,
Yeah.
gave it a nice little,
Yeah, absolutely. He revived some of it.
He did. It was there anyway, but he just it's all pouring out,
No, I remember in the 70s it was worse than in 90s.
Yeah.
It was worse. Used to be worse. And with Trump, it got revived. Yes.
Yeah.
People now come out in the open. Hey, it's not so. It's okay to be like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I just want to say too that the particular ideology around social Darwinism is never actually what Darwin argued. It's always
Right.
about locating a particular group of people as the weak who are pulling down the rest of us, in quotation marks. And you all know how that goes. You end up with situations like, Nazi Germany. You end up with, not that these are equivalents, but under Reagan, who came up earlier, you had the notion that the welfare mother, who was always racialized as a black woman with too many children in the
welfare
political
queen,
discourse, was the enemy of the United States. And
Right.
there's a host of problems and real life consequences that follow from that sort of thing.
Oh, very
So I
much
think
so.
you're right.
Yeah.
They should be pissed on as often as possible.
Yeah, because it leads down really scary. It can lead to terrible, really horrible things. I actually believe that it's true for most people. We are born into a circumstance and make the logical decisions accordingly. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, I at the beginning of the show I mentioned that of course Darwin, the fittest survive, or the individuals that are best adapted to their environment, is a completely different idea than like the strong survive. I like to use the example of the fish fin. Like it's good to have a fin if you're in the water, but if you're on land, not so good. So it's not the characteristic, it's the environment. And it's a completely different idea than the strong. So it's not the strong necessarily that survive.
No, it's the fittest in a
It's
particular
the fittest, yeah, the individuals that are best adapted to their environment.
Right, and for Darwin too, it's important to note that evolution simply meant change over time for him.
Yeah.
Which in his time was a really controversial idea. The idea that species were actually mutable. And there's mechanisms that he discerned that govern how species change over time, and natural selection, as you know, is just one of them, right?
Yeah, it was Herbert Spencer that sort of applied it to society, applied the whole idea to society, not so much, not at all Darwin, not Darwin at all. He didn't even believe that stuff, which is why I have this behind me.
Right.
Yeah, but it's I think it's never going away, but I think that it's important to argue against it. Yeah. So, all right. So I think that we need to leave it on a positive note.
Well, you have a few more minutes.
Yeah. So give us a positive note there, Conrad.
Well, one is we seem to agree pretty much.
Yes, I think we do.
Or whatever words we use, but whatever sentences but we seem to
Right.
like I do believe
Conrad, you always like to walk the middle road, right? You like to point out that a system of complete dependence, like the system that you grew up in, is not good, and the other extreme is also not effective. That you need maybe a little of both.
Well, obviously.
Right.
Obviously.
That's always your stance on things. A little of both.
because that's
It's
how.
hard to figure out where the, what's a good mix, but
Well, there's different. That's something to experiment with and ponder or whatever.
Yeah.
But the true how it was over here before. Whenever the government wasn't involved much in 1700s, it resulted in civil war. Yay!
yeah. Yeah, you need some sort of
So
some kind of a safety.
you have this
Not in
extreme,
place, yeah.
case over here.
Yep.
Where people we think left, we think right. Well, kill each other.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I said, I don't think they really think it through. But I do think a more progressive era is coming again. I think we're moving in that direction. That's
I definitely think.
my optimistic.
No, I definitely think COVID introduced that more compassion. People are more compassionate towards each other.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's true, and there is goodness in that.
Yes,
I
I totally agree. Rigo, you have an optimistic statement to make.
Sure, I'll make
have
a
to-
quick.
It
Which
doesn't
is
have
the-
to be optimistic. Go ahead.
I was until recently teaching mostly 18 to 23-year-olds, and among that group, that demographic, at least the ones I taught, there was a real critical awareness of the sort that the three of us have been discussing, and I find a lot of hope in that.
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
No, we are getting wiser. We are getting wiser.
Yes.
As a society, I can't speak about other countries, because Russia doesn't seem to be all that wise at the moment.
At the moment, right? Yeah.
But at least part of the population that's pro-Putin. But
Right.
and this stuff is going to keep happening, I guess, for millennia, every so often. But overall, we are getting wiser.
Yes,
You know what I mean? And
I agree.
part of it is being less mean to people for no good reason, or even for any reason.
Yay for compassion.
So,
It's the glue that holds society together. That and lying.
no, but
Lying
I
is
think
the
a
other
lot
thing.
of that is,
Yeah,
let's call it wisdom, because we understand better.
yeah,
Where lack of understanding, that's why I say wisdom. We're getting wiser, and COVID, I think, contributed to it.
yes, a little bit. All right. Well, we've exhausted another hour just batting ideas around, which is really fun, I find. We didn't come to any conclusions, but we had fun just batting ideas around. Ronnie enjoyed the show. Thank you, Ronnie. Aspen enjoyed the show. Very cool. And I'm so happy that people participated in the comments, as well as Rigo, of course, coming on, and Conrad, as always, coming on to the show. So I'm not just sitting here talking to myself, which is no fun. So thank you all for participating. And so tonight we did kind of a little bit of a controversial topic. I think most of us are on the same page, so we didn't have much conflict. But it was still a lively discussion, which I thought, and it was an excellent discussion, and just to illustrate how widely we cast our net for topics. This week we talked about social Darwinism, and next week we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons. Hey, so if you have some Dungeons and Dragons questions, we have a mystery guest who's going to come on and is going to discuss the current state of the game and why it's so popular and how to play the game and whatever. We don't know where the conversation is going to go, but we're talking Dungeons and Dragons next week. So I'm looking forward to that. And I always look forward to doing the show, and I hope you guys have a good week and keep your lines of communication open.
Let's have words, say what it's all about. We're gonna say what it's about.